They said the Earl of Westmont could freeze a room with a single glance. They said he trusted no one, admired no one, loved no one. And they said he certainly had no business speaking to a girl like her. A girl with ink, stained fingers, a sharp tongue, and no patience for nobility. But fate does not care for rules, especially when he hears her laugh for the very first time. The girl who didn't beau the Earl of Westmont was known for three things: his wealth, his silence, and the unsettling way he watched people, as if he were memorizing their weaknesses. Miss Eleanor Briar, meanwhile, was known for none of these things. She lived in the back of her uncle's small bookshop in Brighton, dusty, cramped, and always smelling faintly of old paper. Customers came and went, but Eleanor remained steady behind the counter, organizing shelves, repairing broken bindings, and pretending not to notice how her uncle treated her, more like an employee than family. Life was predictable. She didn't hate it, but she didn't love it either. One late afternoon, a sudden gust of coastal wind shook the shop door open. It banged against the wall and startled Eleanor halfway out of her shoes. She hurried forward to scold whoever entered so carelessly, only to stop dead in her tracks. A tall man stepped inside, not handsome in the typical ballroom sense, no softness, no warmth, but striking sharp, cold, impossibly still. He wore no expression at all, yet his eyes, pale gray and startlingly observant, swept the shop like a judgment. Eleanor cleared her throat. "Sir, may I help you?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her, really studied her, as though the mere sight of her disrupted something inside him he didn't know how to name. Finally, he spoke. "Your door needs repair." She blinked. "My, what?" "Your hinges, they're misaligned. It will break by winter." Most men would comment on the books, the prices, the weather. This man commented on door hinges. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "I'll keep that in mind. Now, are you here for a book?" He didn't answer again. Instead, he walked directly to the shelf where the rarest, most expensive volumes rested, editions most customers never even touched. He selected one, then another, then another. Eleanor watched, mildly offended. "Sir, those are not for casual browsing." "There. I'll take all three," he said. Her jaw dropped. "They cost more than most people make in 4 months. I am aware." Well, I wasn't aware that anyone bought books without reading the synopsis first. That earned her something she did not expect. A small pause. A faint twitch of his mouth, as if the idea of smiling threatened him. And then, "You talk too freely," he said. "You stare too much," she replied. Their eyes locked. A strange, quiet tension pulsed between them, neither hostile nor warm, simply alive. He placed the books on the counter. "I am the Earl of Westmont." Eleanor froze. She had heard of him. Everyone had. Reserved, detached, difficult. A man who rarely appeared in public and never indulged in conversation that wasn't essential, which explained his lack of patience. She bowed her head automatically, then stopped halfway. Something inside her stiffened. She lifted her chin again, refusing the bow. His brows drew together, almost imperceptibly, but the reaction was clear. No one refused to bow to him. No one. Eleanor met his gaze and said plainly, "Being an earl doesn't make you any less of a customer in my shop." Silence stretched, long, charged, unsettling. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope, and set it beside the books. "This is payment," he said. "Keep the change." Eleanor glanced at the envelope and nearly choked. It contained far more than the cost of 3 books. It was almost an insultingly large amount. "Sir, this is too much." "It is not," he replied. "It is the price of honesty." Before she could ask what that meant, he turned toward the door. But at the threshold, he hesitated. Just for a moment, just long enough for her to see him glance back, once, at her. A look not cold, not empty, not calculating. A look that held the faintest, most reluctant flicker of interest. Then he left. Eleanor exhaled slowly, steadying herself against the counter. She did not know it yet, but the Earl who never smiled had just found the first thing powerful enough to disrupt his perfectly ordered life. Her. The Earl returns. And this time, it isn't for books for 3 full days. Eleanor Briar tried, and failed. to convince herself that the Earl of Westmont's visit had been nothing more than an odd interruption in an otherwise predictable life. But her mind betrayed her. She remembered the way he stood, too rigid for comfort, too controlled for a man his age. She remembered his voice, flat, precise, yet carrying something unspoken beneath every word. And she remembered the way he glanced back at her, once, as if the simple act cost him more effort than lifting a sword. She told herself it didn't matter. He was a noble. She was a shop girl. People like him did not return to places like hers. So when the shop door chimed again on the fourth morning, Eleanor didn't even look up from the ledger. "Uncle, if that's another delivery." "It is not." The voice froze her hand mid-page. Eleanor's head snapped up. He was back. The Earl of Westmont stood inside the little bookshop as though he had every right to be there. Today he wore dark riding clothes instead of a formal coat. Even so, he carried the same aura, silent authority, quiet intensity, the invisible weight of a man who had learned too early how to command a room. He wasn't alone. A tall, well-kept man stood behind him, broad-shouldered, watchful, a bodyguard, or more likely, his steward. Eleanor straightened. "You're here again." He nodded. No greeting, no explanation. Just presence. Her uncle, noticing the noble attire, rushed forward, nearly tripping over a stack of books. "My lord." "Welcome. How may we assist you?" "I require Miss Briar," the Earl said simply. Eleanor blinked. "Meme? Outside," he added. "If you please." Her uncle looked ready to faint with excitement. "Go, Eleanor. Quickly, the Earl asks for you." She shot her uncle a glare before stepping outside, wiping her hands nervously on her apron. The Earl stood just beyond the doorway, hands clasped behind his back. He looked at the sky rather than at her, as though examining the weather was somehow easier than examining her face. "You left in a hurry last time," Eleanor said cautiously. "I am not accustomed to lingering," he replied. "Nor to explaining yourself, I imagine." His jaw tensed. But this time, instead of ignoring her remark, he actually responded. "I returned because I have a question for you." Eleanor blinked. "A question for me?" "Yes." She crossed her arms. "Then ask." He hesitated. An unexpected, almost awkward pause. The Earl of Westmont did not seem like a man who hesitated often. Finally, "Do you enjoy working in that shop?" Eleanor stared at him, taken aback. It's work, my lord. It pays the bills." "That is not what I asked." She frowned. "Why are you asking?" "Because," he said slowly, "I have never seen a person speak the way you do, while living a life that appears to dim her." The words struck her harder than she expected. He had noticed, not just her refusal to bow, not just her sharp tongue, but her tiredness, her restlessness, her dissatisfaction. She never dared to voice aloud. Eleanor swallowed. "What business is that of yours?" He answered with the same calm certainty he carried in everything he did. "Because I wish to offer you another kind of work." She blinked. "Work? What kind of work?" "My personal archivist." Eleanor's mouth fell open. "My what?" "You read. You repair books. You annotate margins with corrections. You know more about literature than half the Royal Library staff." "How would you know that?" she asked, stunned. He paused. "I read the notes you left inside one of the books I purchased," he admitted. "Your observations were annoyingly correct." She nearly choked. "Annoyingly." "Yes," he said, "because I have never been corrected in the margins before. It was an unwelcome experience." Eleanor tried not to laugh. She failed. The Earl exhaled slowly, as if her laughter was something he was unused to, yet not displeased by. "You would live at Westmont Hall," he continued. "Your work would be restoring my library, cataloging, maintaining the archives. The salary is generous." Her smile faded. "Live at your estate?" "Yes, with you." He blinked, realizing how that sounded, and corrected himself. "Not with me, at my estate, in a separate wing." "Still outrageous," she said. "Most sensible things are," he replied. Eleanor stepped back, overwhelmed. He was serious. The Earl, this cold, unreadable man, wanted her in his home, wanted her talents, wanted something she couldn't yet define. My lord, I can't simply leave my life behind because a stranger offers me employment. He tilted his head slightly. A stranger? Well, yes. He studied her again, quiet and steady. You are not a stranger to me, Miss Briar. Something fluttered unsteadily in her chest. She forced herself to breathe. I need time to think. You have 2 days. 2 days. That's hardly. 2 days, he repeated, turning away. His steward opened the carriage door, but before entering, the Earl looked back at her, just as he had the first time, and said, Miss Briar, when you decide, send word to Westmont Hall. I will be waiting. The carriage rolled away, leaving Eleanor on the cobblestone street, heart hammering, thoughts tumbling violently. She had never been offered anything in her life. And now, the most unreadable man in England offered her a future she didn't understand, but couldn't stop thinking about. The next morning dawned slow and heavy, like the sky itself was unsure whether it wished to be bright or remain covered. Amelia had expected the Earl to summon her again, perhaps for another lesson, perhaps for another attempt at conversation. But the hours passed without a word. Instead, she found comfort in the gardens, where she sat beneath the old chestnut tree, with a book she wasn't really reading. She had never met a man so stubbornly locked inside himself. But that afternoon, something happened that shifted the ground beneath both of them. Lord Hawthorne had risen early, as he always did. But today he avoided the estate's bustle. Something in his chest felt unsettled. Perhaps it was Amelia's presence. Perhaps it was the realization that he had not pushed her away the night before. Despite every intention to, he found himself wandering the long corridor that led to his late mother's study. It was a room he rarely entered anymore. But today something drew him in. On the desk lay a stack of old letters, ones he had gone through dozens of times during his grieving years. But now, a small slip of paper caught his attention. One that had definitely not been there before. He picked it up. It was addressed to him. But it wasn't written by his mother. It was written by Amelia. He recognized the handwriting instantly. The letter was unfinished. The ink still looked fresh, as if abandoned in haste. And when he read the first line, he froze. My lord, I do not understand why you fear kindness as if it were a weapon. His breath caught. He read further. Every time I try to speak to you, it feels like I am knocking on the door of a house no one has lived in for years. He swallowed hard. Each line was a mirror lifted to his face, one he had never allowed anyone to hold. I am not trying to fix you. I am just trying to understand you. You push people away so fiercely that I wonder if you even notice when someone reaches out gently. He exhaled sharply, anger and confusion mixing in his chest. Why did her words sting so deeply? Why did the truth feel like a blade? And then came the line that destroyed him. If I am a burden on this house, I will leave. But if you want me to stay, you must at least let me speak to you without fear. He stopped reading. His fist tightened around the paper, not out of rage, but because something inside him felt dangerously close to breaking open. Amelia had written that letter the previous night, overwhelmed by the Earl's coldness and her own confusion. But before she could finish it, a maid had called her, saying the Earl needed the study unlocked for a carpenter. She had placed the letter near the stack, intending to retrieve it later, but she never expected him to see it. She certainly never expected him to silently walk toward the gardens, searching for her with the letter folded tightly in his hand. She did not hear him approach. He moved quietly for a man who usually carried storms in his steps. Miss Amelia. His voice cut the air softly, but with a tension she instantly recognized. She turned. My lord. He didn't sit, didn't look around. His eyes stayed fixed on her, like he was fighting an inner battle. You wrote something. His voice was low, controlled, dangerously calm. Something I was not meant to read. Her breath stalled. My lord, you weren't supposed to. I know. He lifted the folded paper. Her heart dropped. Not out of shame. She had written the truth. But because she could not predict what a man like him would do with truth, she stood slowly. I wrote it in frustration. I wrote it because I felt unheard. It was not meant to accuse you. He watched her for several long seconds, too long, and then he spoke in a voice that sounded almost tired. Is that truly how you see me? A man who cannot bear kindness, she swallowed. You said it yourself, my lord. You do not welcome company. You do not allow anyone close. A muscle in his jaw tightened. She continued quietly, gently. Your heart is locked behind something I cannot name, but I see you trying, and failing, and hurting yourself in the process. The wind moved between them, carrying the scent of wet earth. For the first time, he didn't hide the flicker of pain in his eyes. I did not ask for you to understand me, he said softly. I know, she whispered, but you're not the only one who never asked for anything. I didn't ask to be brought here. I didn't ask for you to be kind one moment and distant the next. His breaths grew uneven, as if her words reached places he kept buried. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped closer. Barely a foot separated them. Amelia, he murmured, you have no idea what you are asking for. And you, she replied, have no idea what you are running from. Silence, long and thick. A silence that carried all the things he had never said, and all the things she wished he would say. Finally, he broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. He did not promise anything. He simply handed the letter back to her. But as he turned to leave, he paused, and without facing her, he said, do not leave the estate, not yet. Then he walked away before she could reply, and Amelia realized something unmistakable. The Earl didn't fear her. He feared how deeply he had already begun to care. The next few days passed, like the quiet before a storm. No thunder, no lightning, but an unmistakable heaviness in the air. Amelia sensed it in every hallway she crossed, every room she entered, every accidental glimpse of the Earl she caught from afar. He avoided her, not out of anger, but out of fear. Fear of what the letter had awakened inside him. Fear of what he saw in her eyes that day in the garden. Fear of the possibility that someone might truly understand him. And Amelia, she walked the estate with a strange mix of patience and frustration twisting inside her. She hadn't meant to corner him emotionally. She hadn't meant to expose wounds he had spent years burying. But now that he had read her unfinished thoughts, nothing between them felt the same. Whispers started among the servants, subtle, but impossible to ignore. The Earl looks troubled these days. He's quieter than usual. He's been asking where Miss Amelia is, but then he disappears before she arrives. Amelia pretended she didn't hear. The last thing she needed was to become the center of the house gossip. Yet her heart betrayed her every time she sensed him near. Lord Hawthorne passed her in corridors more than once. He never stopped, never spoke, but his eyes lingered for a fraction longer than a polite glance should allow. He was struggling. That much was painfully obvious. One evening, unable to sleep, Lord Hawthorne paced the length of his study. Her words, "Your heart is locked behind something I cannot name," echoed relentlessly in his mind. He remembered the night his mother had died, the night his father had shut himself away, the years of silence, of carrying responsibilities without guidance, of failing and having no one to lean on. He had built walls so high he forgot they were walls. He lived inside a fortress Amelia had somehow stepped inside without permission, and what terrified him most was that she did not leave. She stayed. Even after seeing the coldness he showed the world, even after writing that letter, even after learning that he had read it, she stayed. That terrified him more than anything. On the fourth night after the garden confrontation, a violent storm tore across the sky. Wind rattled the window panes, lightning split the clouds, and the rain hammered the estate roof like angry fists. Amelia couldn't sleep either. Weather like this always unsettled her. Instead, she wrapped herself in a shawl and walked quietly through the dimly lit halls. She hadn't expected to see him, but when she reached the far corridor near the library, she froze. The Earl stood at the tall window staring into the storm, as if searching for answers inside it. His posture was stiff. His hands were clenched behind his back. He looked like a man fighting a battle with his own mind. Amelia hesitated. Approaching him felt dangerous, not physically, but emotionally. One wrong word could push him further into the shell he had been hiding in. But she chose to move closer, slowly, softly. "My lord." He didn't turn, but his breath shifted, a sign he had heard her. "You should be asleep," he said quietly. "So should you," she replied, just as softly. A crack of thunder shook the glass, and she instinctively flinched. The Earl noticed. For the first time in days, he turned toward her. "Does the storm frighten you?" he asked. "No," she lied. He raised one eyebrow, a rare, subtle expression she barely recognized. "You're a terrible liar, Miss Amelia." She looked away, embarrassed. And then, unexpectedly, he stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough that she could hear the steadiness of his breath, feel the shift in his guarded presence. "Why are you walking alone at this hour?" he asked. "Because I couldn't sleep." "Why not?" She hesitated. Her truth was simple but heavy. "Because the house feels different now. Because I don't know where I stand with you anymore." Silence. A long silence. Then he exhaled slowly, almost as if releasing something he had been holding too tightly. "You stand," he said quietly, "far closer than anyone I should allow." She blinked. "My lord, what does that mean?" "It means," he said, voice low, "that ever since I read your letter, I have not been able to think of anything else." Amelia's heart thudded. She waited for him to continue. "I have spent years believing that closeness leads to loss, that letting someone in is an invitation to pain. I don't know how to be open." His voice cracked slightly. Not anymore. There it was, his first true confession. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just raw honesty. Amelia stepped closer, her voice gentle. "You don't have to know everything, my lord. You don't have to speak perfectly. You just have to speak." He stared at her as if she had said something impossible, something he had never allowed himself to hear. "And if I speak," he murmured, "what then? What will you do with the truth?" "Listen," she whispered, "nothing more." Another bolt of lightning split the sky. The Earl didn't flinch, but his hand twitched, as if he had nearly reached for her without thinking. He pulled it back immediately. "I am not a good man for you to depend on," he said. "I am not depending on you," she replied. "I'm simply here." That simple statement seemed to shake something inside him. For the first time, he didn't hide the emotion in his eyes. Fear, longing, exhaustion, and something that looked dangerously close to surrender. He took a small step toward her, just one, and in that single step, everything changed. "Amelia," he said quietly, "I don't know how to let you in without losing myself." She held his gaze. "You won't lose yourself," she said softly. "You'll just stop being alone." His breath caught. He didn't move again, he didn't touch her. But the distance between them closed in ways neither could measure. When the thunder rolled again, he finally whispered, "Stay for a while." And Amelia, for the first time, saw him not as the untouchable Earl, but as a man finally allowing a crack in the wall he had built around his heart. The storm quieted. But inside Hawthorne Manor, something entirely different was unraveling. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. Amelia remained by the tall window beside the Earl, not touching him, not speaking, just present, as he had asked. And for a man who had spent years avoiding closeness, that simple act of staying was more intimate than any gesture she could have imagined. At first, he said nothing. Then, very quietly, he began to speak. "When I told you I didn't know how to let you in without losing myself," he murmured, "I meant it literally." Amelia turned her head, waiting. He did not look at her. But his voice softened in a way she had never heard before. Gentle, hesitant, honest to the bone. "When I was young," he began, "I believed the world was predictable. If you worked hard, you would succeed. If you behaved well, you would be loved. But life never holds its promises." She listened silently. "My mother died when I was 13. My father, already distant, closed himself off entirely overnight. I became the heir of a title, an estate, a lineage, and not a single person taught me how to carry any of it." His throat tightened. "I learned to bury everything. Responsibility became survival. Emotion became weakness." "You were a child," Amelia whispered. "No," he said hollowly. "I was made to feel like a man the moment I lost the only person who ever saw me." Amelia's heart ached for him, not with pity, but with understanding. "I spent years believing that attachment is a liability," he continued, "that if I let someone close, they would either leave me or break me." He exhaled sharply. "And then you came here." Amelia's breath hitched. "You were supposed to be temporary, a guest." A responsibility I intended to manage from a polite distance. She said nothing, but instead, he admitted, I found myself watching you, listening to your laughter, wondering why you were able to fit into this house as if you had always belonged. Amelia shifted slightly, unsure if she should move closer or remain still. His next words stunned her. You frightened me. She blinked. I frightened you. Yes, he said, finally turning toward her fully. His eyes, dark and unguarded, held an emotion she had never seen from him before. Because you saw me, and no one has truly seen me in years. Amelia swallowed hard. Her voice was almost a whisper. And do you still want to push me away? He hesitated. His jaw tightened. His eyes softened. No, he admitted. But I do not know how to pull you closer either. The storm clouds thinned outside, leaving only a soft drizzle. The Earl took a step closer, closer than he had ever allowed before. Amelia didn't move, didn't breathe too loudly. My father once told me, he said quietly, that love was a foolish man's distraction. That duty came before affection. I believed him for far too long. Amelia's voice was steady, and now, he said slowly, I fear I may be the foolish one, because despite every instinct telling me to remain distant, I find myself wanting to reach for you. Her chest tightened. And what stops you? She asked, barely audible. He lowered his head slightly. Fear, he said simply. Fear that if I let myself want you, I will want too much. Fear that you will see everything wrong with me and decide you were mistaken to care. Amelia stepped closer, so close they could feel each other's breath. You think I don't already know your flaws? She whispered. Your silence, your rigidness, your walls, your distance. He inhaled sharply. And yet, you're still here. Yes, she said softly. I stayed because you're not the cold man you pretend to be. Even if you don't see it, I do. For a long moment, he stared at her like a drowning man staring at the surface of the water, terrified, desperate, yearning. He lifted a hand, slowly, hesitantly, as though he was fighting himself for every inch. His fingers hovered near her cheek, not touching, just close enough to feel the warmth of her skin. Amelia, her name came out broken, weighted, full of everything he had held back. You don't have to be afraid, she murmured. His fingertips trembled. He closed the distance, almost, but at the last second, he pulled back, swallowing hard. I cannot, he whispered, not yet. She didn't take offense. She didn't withdraw. Instead, she reached up and gently, very gently, touched the back of his hand, not pulling him, not urging him, just telling him she felt his struggle, and she wasn't leaving because of it. His breath shuddered. You're too kind, he said. No, she corrected. I'm simply patient. Lightning flashed faintly in the distance. The Earl looked at her with something raw and unmasked. Amelia, please don't give up on me. I am trying. I know, she whispered. That is enough for now. A quiet peace settled between them. Not romantic, not dramatic, but deeply human. He stepped back, not out of fear, but out of control. Let me escort you to your room, he said softly. She nodded. But when he offered his arm, it wasn't stiff and formal like before. It was hesitant, careful, vulnerable, and Amelia placed her hand on his arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. As they walked through the silent halls, one thought echoed in the Earl's mind. She is the first person I have ever wanted to stay, and in Amelia's heart, he is finally letting me in, one fragile step at a time. The next morning arrived quietly, without storms, without shadows, only a strange, unfamiliar stillness. Amelia rose earlier than usual, unable to shake the memory of the Earl's trembling voice the night before. The way he almost touched her. The way he admitted fear, longing, weakness. It had been the closest she had ever felt to him, and somehow, the farthest he had ever let anyone come. But today, something else was waiting, something neither of them expected. A soft knock sounded at her chamber door. It was Mrs. Holloway, the longtime housekeeper, her expression unusually tense. Miss Amelia, I think you must come downstairs. Amelia frowned. Did something happen? Mrs. Holloway hesitated. It is the Earl. Amelia's heartbeat stumbled. She followed her quickly down the hallway, through the long corridor, to the grand foyer. where two strangers stood, well dressed, pale, nervous. One of them turned sharply toward Amelia. "You," he said. "You are the lady staying in this house." "I am," Amelia said cautiously. "May I ask why you've come?" The older man cleared his throat. "We have come on behalf of Lady Beatrice Blythe." Amelia stiffened. The Earl's former fiancée. The housekeeper flinched as though expecting a blow. The man continued. "Lady Beatrice requests an immediate conversation with the Earl. She believes he has made a reckless decision, one influenced by an unsuitable woman." Unsuitable. A cold arrow straight to Amelia's chest. "And what decision is that?" Amelia asked quietly. The man hesitated, but not for long. "She believes the Earl intends to offer you marriage." The world stilled. Amelia's breath caught. Her hands trembled. "She believes," the man repeated, "that you have manipulated him into affection." Mrs. Holloway stepped forward sharply. "How dare you speak to this young lady in—" "No," Amelia whispered, shaking her head, her voice tight. "Please." She swallowed the sting rising in her throat. "Where is the Earl now?" she asked. "In his study," the man said, "and he has refused to see Lady Beatrice. She is furious. She intends to come here herself shortly." Amelia felt the floor tilt beneath her. If society attacked, if an ex-fiancée stormed in, if rumors spread, it wouldn't just be gossip. It would ruin him. It would ruin both of them. Amelia took a shaky breath. "Please leave," she said softly. "This is not the place for your accusations." The men hesitated, then bowed stiffly and exited. The moment the door shut, Mrs. Holloway touched Amelia's arm. "My dear," she whispered, "you must go to him." Amelia nodded. She turned and walked toward the study, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. The door stood slightly ajar. The Earl sat at his desk, hands pressed to his forehead, hair disheveled, breathing unsteadily. He looked devastated, different from last night. Smaller somehow. Amelia stepped inside quietly. "You heard," he said without looking at her. "Yes," she whispered. He finally lifted his head. His eyes were tired, haunted in a way she had never seen, not even during his storm-bound confession. "I cannot let them destroy you," he said. "Everything they said downstairs, every cruel assumption they made, if Beatrice acts on it, if she speaks to the right people, it will spread across London in a day." "I am not afraid for myself," Amelia said. "You should be." He rose abruptly. "You should be terrified, because this," he motioned between them, "was never supposed to become anything. I should have kept more distance. I should have pushed you away." "And do you want to?" she asked quietly. He froze. "No," he said hoarsely. "But wanting you and keeping you safe are not the same thing." Amelia's voice cracked. "And what will keep me safe?" "Distance," he whispered. "If word spreads that I favored you, you will become a target. They will tear you apart." "And what about you?" she asked. A humorless smile touched his lips. "I am already torn." Amelia's heart clenched. Silence thickened. Then softly, painfully, she said, "Tell me what you truly want. Not what society expects. Not what fear tells you. You. What do you want?" He closed his eyes. His answer broke her. "You." He said it like a man confessing a crime. Then he opened his eyes again, and her breath caught in her throat. "I want you, Amelia. Every part of me fights it, but I want you, not as a responsibility, not as a guest under my roof, but as—" He stopped himself. "As what?" she whispered. He inhaled shakily. "As the woman I am falling in love with." Her breath faltered. But before she could speak, he stepped back, anguished. "And that is why I must send you away." It felt like a physical blow. "Send me away," she repeated. "Yes," he said, tearing his gaze from hers. "I cannot watch them destroy you because I lacked the strength to stay distant. I will make arrangements immediately." She shook her head. Yes. It is my decision. It is my life. It is my heart." He slammed his hands onto the desk. "Don't you understand, Amelia? If you stay, I will not let you go. And once that happens, there will be no undoing the consequences." Amelia swallowed hard. "Then let the consequences come." "Amelia." "No," she said fiercely. "You told me last night you were trying. Let me try too." I don't want protection at the cost of losing you. His voice dropped to a tortured whisper. You deserve better than a man who is afraid. And you deserve someone who stays even when you're frightened. He exhaled shakily, almost breaking. Amelia, she stepped forward. I love you, she said simply. His entire body went still. No fear, no conditions, no regrets, she whispered. I love you. Tears slipped into his eyes, something she had never seen before. Slowly, as though fighting every instinct, he reached for her hand. This time, he didn't pull back. He held it, firm, warm, steady, against all his walls, all his fears, all his wounds. He chose her. I love you, he whispered back. God help me, Amelia, I love you. He pulled her closer, not in passion, but in the quiet desperation of a man who had spent years starving for touch, and finally found a home in it. Stay, he murmured, if you will bear the whispers, if you will bear me. She smiled through tears. I will bear whatever comes. He closed his eyes, forehead resting against hers. Then we face them together, he whispered. He lifted her hand and pressed a slow, reverent kiss to her knuckles. Not a kiss of lust, not a kiss of ownership, a kiss of devotion. I swear, he said softly, I will protect you, not from the world, but from becoming another wound I inflict on myself. She cupped his cheek. And I swear I will not let you face that world alone. In the quiet of his study, among papers, shadows, and the ghosts of his past, the Earl finally did what he had never done before. He chose love, not because he was ready, not because he was healed, but because he finally realized she was worth the risk. And for the first time in his life, he was worth loving too.